In this video, we are going to cover how to create a property, the importance of entering the various key pieces of property information, how to assign an owner to their property and automate the owner distribution process, how to add and track equipment maintenance history, warranties, and more, as well as the difference between property information and listing information and where to edit both. Without further ado, let's get started. When looking at the properties in TenantCloud and the units and how the system works with adding those or importing them and then setting them up and listing units and signing owners to the various properties that they own that you manage in TenantCloud and messaging tenants through a message board and so on and so forth. There's a lot that goes into the property and unit level. And so we're going to touch base on a few of those things real quick here. And so the first place you want to go when you're talking about properties and units is to the Properties tab. And you'll notice that when you click on the Properties tab that both properties and units show up here. And on the dashboard, you're going to have a few different ways to look at this and to filter and sort it. The first thing is you can click either list view or grid view, whichever is your preference on how to view the properties on your page. And the information doesn't really change, just the layout of the information. So whatever is easier on your eyes is how you can sort that. And then there's additional options to search for properties. Now keep in mind the search field is based off of the property name. And so if you're looking for and I'll show you where the property name is and how to set that up in a second. But to search for a property, you'll use the search field right here and type in a keyword related to the property name, and it will pull up that property. The other option here is the filter option. So you can select filter and you can filter by property type. You can filter by owner, property status, or balance. And property type is single family or multifamily. And before we jump into anything else here, the other option here is you can display active or archived. And it's actually important that you keep an eye out for this sub menu on pretty much any page you're on in TenantCloud. This submenu usually offers a few other sorting or filter options on what you want displayed. In this case, it'll automatically default to show you only active properties, but you can see archived properties, which I don't have any right now. But if you were to archive a property, let's say you stop managing a property or the property sells or whatever, you'll probably want to just archive that property because you don't want to delete it because you'll lose all of the associated records for things like tenants and leases and accounting, you would lose everything if you deleted the property. So instead of deleting, you want to archive it, and that'll be displayed under the archived setting under properties if you want to ever go back and look at the information there. The other option that you have as opposed to adding each property individually is if you have a number of properties or a number of units, you can click import. And we recommend that you download the import file because that is going to provide you with the template, which is the order or the way in which you need to upload the information into the system so that the system can properly parse that data and upload it into the correct places in the system so it'll ultimately display the way you want it to display. So just keep that in mind. You can you can bulk import properties. And also keep in mind you can sort this by units. So if you don't want to see just the property level, you can also see it on the unit level. But for all intended purposes, right now we'll keep it on the property level. The next thing that you want to do if you want to just add a additional property or just one property at a time and enter the information yourself, you can click Add Property. And when you click Add Property, you're going to go in here, and this is where the first thing you're going to see is that property name I was telling you about. Remember when I said you could search for properties on the property page? This is where you would enter that information. So Grove Street House, if I were to search with the word Grove, then it would pull up this as one of the properties with that keyword. So you want to name the property name what you typically refer to it as, and that's how you can search for it in your Properties tab. You can do things like setting up your currency for the property, your street address, Keep in mind that this does operate off of a Google suggested address. So if you are entering in an address, it's going to provide you with some options here. So 1999 Harrison Street, Oakland, California. And it's important that you do use the official legal address, because when you syndicate this listing out to the listing sites, they all pretty much operate off of the same database. And so it's important that you do use the registered legal address as it would come up in something like Google Street or Google Maps. The second part of setting up a property is you cannot change this after you set up the property. So it's important that you select the right property type. So when you're setting it up, single unit type is for a single family rental, which is typically just a single family house, a single mobile home, or a single condo, and not a condo in a building that you manage, but a single condo that you manage. Now, if you manage a multi-family property or you have multiple units under the same address, that is when you are going to use the multi-family or multi-unit type. So this would be if you have apartment building or a duplex or a fourplex or anything like that, you're going to want to set up a multi-unit type. And you'll see that when I select that option, it changes the information that the system's going to ask you in the format in which it's going to ask you for that information. So it's important that you do select the correct property type at the time that you set this up, because you cannot change this after the fact. In this case, we'll just go ahead and do a few things here. You can set up the beds, the baths, the square footage, the parking, the market rent, and the deposit. Keep in mind that the market rent is not the listed rent, and it's not the rent that you are getting currently if you have an active lease on this rental. The market rent is a term that is used in property management where it is what you believe the market has set the rent for that property. What can you actually get for that property? It's not what you are getting, it's what could you potentially get in your market. So you might be renting out an apartment or a home or whatever for $1,000 a month, but the market in your area for comparable properties might actually be leasing out at $1,100. And so that's what this field is for, is it's just for you at a glance when you're looking at your property information to see that, the market has a potential rent of $1,100 and I'm only getting $1,000, so maybe I can increase my tenant's rent by $25 or $50 come renewal time, or any situation like that where market rent would come in handy. Market rent is also good for sometimes if you're selling property, somebody's buying it from you, or a bank is trying to put together financial data for your property. Having that market rent of information available for them is sometimes something they might ask you for. And so it's just good information to have for your property. And so just make sure that if you're putting an amount in here that you know exactly what that is. It's not the current rent you're getting, it's what you think you could get based on your market. The other thing is the property message board here off to the side is if you're on our advanced plan or higher, you have a property message board, and that's basically, it's like a bulletin board for the entire community. Instead of messaging each tenant individually, you post to a property message board and everybody can see it. You can enable or disable comments, so people can comment or not. And so it would be for things like if you're having a community event like National Night Out, or if you're having a grand opening of your pool for the summer or something like that, or it's a winter freeze warning notice that you want to post, you can use the activity board for that, the property board. And so you could just click yes, and you can also choose if you want to allow tenants to publish onto the board. And so it's a pretty cool feature on TenantCloud, and it's unique, and it's very useful, especially when it comes to community notices. The other things that you'll want to look at here is primarily you want to make sure you upload a property photo, because this property photo is going to carry over onto your listings. So just make sure that this photo it's generally going to be the first photo. And so you want to make sure that it is the nicest photo that you upload. And so it's usually going to be something that shows the curb appeal of the property. It's usually going to be a photo of the front of the property, and it just really is a photo to highlight your property when you go to list it. And then you can upload some gallery photos if you would like. And then there are additional things that you can fill out on the property level, such as features or property amenities, whether you have laundry in the unit or if it's a shared laundry for the community. And then you go down here and there's a show additional info button, which is hiding additional fields. And right above that is one of the most important sections. That section is your property owners and terms. And you'll see a little toggle that says to assign owners. And it gives you a description of what this does here. You can add owners to this property, basically telling the system this owner owns this property. And you can have the option, once you've assigned owners to this property, to share reports for this property with them, to send distributions, request contributions. You can communicate with them about this property, share maintenance requests, and much more. So if you have owners for a property, so you're managing a property for another owner, or even if you have LLCs set up for your property and they're the legal owner, you can click yes to assign that owner. And so let's say I own Bob Boomerang LLC. Yes, I'm managing this property, but I am managing it for Bob Boomerang. That's the actual owner. And for accounting purposes, maybe I want to show contribution, distributions, expenses, and income and stuff directly under this LLC. So I would actually set up my own LLC as an owner and then assign them to this property. You can actually add multiple owners, and you can assign ownership percentages based off of what amount or percentage of the property they own. And then you can do other cool things like adding notes, and then you can set up owner distributions, which are automatically the system automatically generates the owner distribution invoices. Now, keep in mind, the system does not automatically pay these. The system only automatically generates the owner distribution invoice based on the owner balance in the system. So, for instance, if you have $1,000 in rent coming in for the month and you have $300 in expenses that have been created and recorded in the system prior to the automatic owner distribution date, which will set the date just to avoid any issues of invoices not being entered in time. We'll say, let's say the 20th. And now the 20th is a pretty common date for property managers to select because it gives you time to A, collect rent, and B, to go through and enter any expenses for that month or from the month prior that have not been paid yet. And so you would enter, if the system said, okay, well, we've collected $1,000 in rent, but you also had $300 in expense invoices for various things, whether it's maintenance or utilities or whatever, then the system is going to generate a $700 distribution invoice because you had $1,000 coming in and $300 going out, and the system says, cool, you have $700 left. That's going to the owner. But keep in mind, you also want to make sure that in the expenses, you've recorded management fees. So management fees would be right here. And so you would set this up and say, okay, well, it's a percentage based, it's 10% management fee. So you actually get $100. So you'd want to make sure that's also recorded. And so if you have $100 in management fees, $300 in property expenses, and $1,000 in rent, that means you're actually, the system's going to say, oh, you also have a $100 management fee that the owner owes you. So really the owner only gets $600. So the system's going to generate a $600 invoice for you, which you still have to go in and authorize the payment to pay them, but the system does all the work and the calculations for you. So again, the reason you want to select a date later in the month typically, which is what most property managers do, is because the system cannot accurately generate that invoice if you don't have all the income and expenses actually recorded in the system for it to do that calculation. So also, the other thing is a property reserve. It's important to note that a property reserve is generally a requirement, and it's typically a requirement by law. And so you'll want to look up and make sure that you're following the law or the guidelines in your region for a property reserve. Basically, the property reserve is for rental properties. Typically, the owner is required to put a certain amount of dollars per door on the property into a basically an escrow account, which is to be reserved for emergency repairs. So say for instance, you were in Texas, and during the summer the AC goes out, and it's a $200 repair to get the AC back up and running, and it's 110 degrees out, and that is considered an emergency. And so that property reserve is essentially money that the owner already has sitting in an account with the property manager who's managing their property, where you can go in and authorize that repair to that AC and pay the funds out, and then the owner needs to reimburse or supply that reserve account, that reserve fund for the next month. So you always need to keep a property reserve on hand. Usually that's somewhere between $200 and $250 per door. But again, you're going to want to verify that you are following the laws and guidelines on that for your specific area and your specific property. Regarding the management fees, you can set a first rent payment commission and an ongoing rent commission. Now, it's important to differentiate what these two things are. A first rent payment commission is the first month that the tenant pays rent. What commission do you want to receive on that? The ongoing rent commission is for the second month and after. So for the first rent payment commission, if it's the same amount, that's fine. The system just needs to know, because sometimes property managers receive a higher commission on the first month's rent. In fact, some are as high as $100, some even more than that if the owner is trying to aggressively get that rental leased out. And they'll offer some type of incentive to the management company to get that unit leased out by paying them a higher management fee for that first rent payment commission, or to incentivize agents and so on and so forth. So you'll want to make sure that you enter the correct amount. If it's the same, just enter 10%. And so this again is for the first month's commission, and this is for the second month commission and going forward. There's also something called a one-time renewal fee, where if the tenant lives at your community and the property manager, obviously an owner, wants to incentivize a property manager to renew the tenants, because we all know that it is cheaper to get the same tenant to stay at the rental property and not have turnover costs that involve both repairs and make ready and the marketing cost for getting it rented again and so on and so forth. It's just much cheaper to have the same tenant stay. So a lot of times property management companies or just people managing properties for third-party owners will have some type of renewal fee built in, because it's a natural organic incentive for you to provide quality service and keep that tenant in the rental as long as possible. It benefits you and it benefits the owner. So this is where you would charge a one-time renewal fee for every time that tenant renews. And so you could set that up here again by flat amount or percent. So let's say it's a percent and it's a 50% cost, which in many cases that's still cheaper than what it would cost an owner to get a new tenant. And then the last one here for the owner section for automatically generating invoices is the service fee. So this is when, if you do maintenance for the owner and the owner is not managing their own maintenance requests, every time that you manage a maintenance request, you would then have the option to generate a service fee for that maintenance request. And what the system does is it automatically calculates it for you. And there's just a single button that you would click on the maintenance request when you've resolved it that says something like generate service fee invoice. And it would automatically generate it based on your settings here. So again, if you say, okay, well, if we spend $120 in expenses, then I want to earn 10% of that, then that would be your fee for managing that maintenance request. So let's say you sent it to a plumber and they charged $100. Then you would say, I want to collect 10% of that $100. So the system would automatically generate an invoice of $10 for your service fee for managing that maintenance request for the owner. And that pretty much wraps up the owner section. But again, this is the most important section on the property level as of today in regard to making sure you have as much stuff automated as possible. So just to recap, you have your property reserve, You have your automatic owner distribution invoices set to a specific day of the month to generate based on current income and expenses that have been recorded. And you have your first rent payment commission, which is for your first month that the tenant pays. And then the second month and onward is the ongoing rent commission. And then you have your one-time renewal fee and your per request service fee. And so you want to make sure you have all these set up according to whatever your agreement is with your owners for third-party rentals. That brings us to the last few sections here. You can add in key numbers, which is great. These help you remember what keys are associated with this property. And you can add as many keys as are applicable here. And then you can actually go to key settings to put in more information regarding the keys on the property. So if you have a numbered key system, you can record which numbers are tied to this property. And then you can go into key settings and even put in notes and details as far as like, okay, well, where does key 5 actually go? You can also go to add in paint colors, which is fantastic because you can put in paint colors for, and this is actually a really big deal for me as a property manager, is one of the biggest pain points was trying to keep track of all the paint colors in the property. So accent walls, exterior paint, interior paint, office paint, door paint, the whole 9 yards. I mean, there's so many different colors when you start thinking about your rental properties, and having it in a file can really be a pain. So just having an internal system that keeps track of this stuff is really great. And so you can put in the paint color, then you can even put in the paint description. So it could be like crystal white, and it was Sherwin-Williams number 53422 office walls. That is, to me as a property manager, that might seem like a very small detail, but for me, that is amazing. That saves me so much time to be able to go into the property and be like, oh yeah, what was the paint color for this property? Oh, okay, yeah, that's what it was. So huge thing for me as a property manager. I think you will find a lot of value in keeping this information. And same with a lot of this other stuff, like the doors. You have different doors in the property. And again, you can record door colors here. Exterior color, you might have a door where the interior and exterior color have two different colors. Lock types and lock information, whether there's a screen door attached to it. Door type could be the model number from Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever you're getting your supplies from. And so it's really fantastic to be able to track this information. Same thing with flooring type, flooring description. You can even upload things like receipts or warranty information on the floor. I mean, the amount of information you can put in on this property and be able to keep track of it all in one spot is really fantastic. Same thing with insurances. If you have insurances on the property, you can record the various insurance types here, and you can even get email notifications from the system when something is about to expire. So you can say, I want to get notified 5, 15, or 30 days prior to this insurance information expiring. And then you can also add in loan and property purchase information. With the loan and property purchase information, these will tie into our amortization tracker and depreciation trackers, which are available through our reports button here, where it'll automatically calculate standard depreciation and amortization information for you. It'll generate the schedules for you. And so if you want to go ahead and add in that information here, that'll automatically pull over so you don't have to re-enter that information every time you want to generate a depreciation or amortization schedule. And you can also, the final information that you can put in here is utility providers' contact information. Again, this is a huge time saver for me as a property manager. Anybody who's been a property manager for any amount of time knows that the one thing that your tenants ask you about is, what providers do I have access to? And that could be anything from whatever you don't have set up by default for them. It could be anything from water to electricity to cable, internet, all of that stuff. You can set up those providers in here, and you can set them up by category and then assign who is what. and even put in estimated monthly costs for those providers. And when you do this, it will show up on the tenant's profile as available utility providers for the property they are renting. So if somebody is renting this specific property in their account, once you've shared the lease and connected with them, then they will be able to see these providers without having to call or email you and ask you who the providers are. So again, huge time saver. You put it in once, you don't have to worry about it ever again. It is fantastic. And I know I said that was the last thing, but it's really not. The actual last thing is the ability to upload and store documents or templates related to this specific property. And so on this specific property, you can upload anything ranging from usually property purchase documents, or maybe even just anything that has to do with the property itself. And so it could be loan information that maybe you didn't upload here, or additional insurance information. Whatever it is, you can upload it and store it here. This is not visible to the tenant. It is only visible to you as the property manager or landlord of this property. And it is important to note that if you do the multi-unit type and not the single unit type, the property information is going to be a little bit different. And the property information that you enter here, there will also be additional information to enter on the individual unit level for things like the stove and whatnot. So we'll jump out and go to a property here that has a multiple units. So for instance, this one right here. And you'll see that each unit you can also view underneath the general property. And so here you'll see there's additional unit information that you can upload specific to the unit, not just the property as a whole. So you can select information here for the unit, and then you can also upload additional information on the unit level, ranging from, again, keys, paint, door, flooring, utilities, and so on and so forth. So, and you can also upload documents on the unit level. So that is the differentiation between the property and the unit level. The other part of a property is once you have it set up, you can also go in and add equipment. And on the equipment level here, you can go in and add any type of equipment in the property. And so this would be anything from appliances to something on the exterior. And it doesn't even have to be equipment per se. It can be even something as simple as a exterior hose faucet or something along those lines. Anything that you want to track the maintenance of for the property, you can pretty much add in here. So for instance, if you wanted to add in an appliance, and let's say we wanted a condenser, it's on the outside of the property and it's on unit 1, I can put in the make, the model, the serial number, the price, the width, the height, the depth, color, the date that I installed it, the expiration date of the warranty, and I can also opt to get notified with a reminder 30 days prior to the warranty expiring, just in case I want to schedule some type of inspection on it to see if anything's faulty or whatever, whether or not it's a lifetime warranty, and then details. And you can also set up a service schedule. So you can set up a recurring schedule for this, and you can schedule it for as often as you want: weekly, 2 weeks, every month, quarterly, semi-annually, annually. You can set the priority, and you can set the next service date and the description for what needs to be done every time that this maintenance reminder is generated. And you can also upload any receipts. So again, for like warranties or insurances for equipment or anything really at all, you can upload to the equipment level. Now, let me see if I have one that has some equipment. I do. And you can see here that I've entered some of that information already. So for instance, the last service date was 10/2/19. The next service date is 10/9/19. So I have this on a weekly recurring schedule, which is pretty intense for an AC condenser. This is a fake account, so it's not a legit maintenance schedule, but you can see here how it generates that automatically for me, and I can click and go view that request. Now, the cool part about this is that anytime you have a maintenance request that you connect to a piece of equipment on the property, like let's say I just had the tenant message in a maintenance request. When they create that maintenance request, I can actually assign it to this piece of equipment for that unit, and it'll automatically show up here as having been a maintenance request for this specific piece of equipment. And why is that awesome? That is awesome because I, as a property manager, want to know how often I am servicing various pieces of equipment, especially when it comes to things like ACs, because if I have serviced a maintenance request and I have X amount of dollars that are out on this specific piece of equipment, and it's becoming a hassle, well, then it might just be worth it at that point to change it. And so, or to get a new one or whatever. So, also lifetime warranty information, fantastic if I can record warranty info, because that tells me when I'm going to start being out a little bit more money, potentially when I start having issues for this thing. But it also tells me, without having to go look up documentation on each piece of equipment, that, oh yeah, this is under warranty. Let me call the company or the contractor or whoever it's under warranty with, to come out and service this, so I don't have to come out of pocket to pay somebody else or take my maintenance guy's time to service this piece of equipment. So a lot of helpful information in here. If something does break down, you've got all the data you need to know what you need to order if you want to do the exact same type. But even if you want a different brand or make or model, you have the width and height and depth information automatically here, so you can order the same exact one, so you don't have to worry about, is it going to fit, or do I need to have my maintenance guys go out and measure it, and what color is it, and all that stuff. Just a lot of really great information right here on the equipment level. So I highly encourage you to go ahead and set all this stuff up on the equipment level for each property and each unit. So after the property is created, you have these quick buttons, which you've already seen me clicking a few of them, but these are really helpful buttons right here on the property card. You can see the property board, which we talked about. That's kind of like the community board. You have the accounting, which will take you straight to the accounting for the property. The equipment, so you can go and see all of the equipment and your equipment history. And you can go straight to the maintenance tab, which will take you to the maintenance requests that have been submitted for this property. You can also select the units. And when you go here, you'll see the various tenants, which this shows me that I have 2 units and one of them is occupied and one is vacant. And I can just click that. I can also click view just to view the property in general. And that will take me to a summary page of the property. And I can also click get a rental report, which basically is a market survey report, which will show me what other properties similar to this one in this area are getting in terms of rent based on the same parameters. So 2 units based on the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the square footage, and so on and so forth. And then it'll compare what I'm charging for rents based off of what the rental report is. If you want to edit the property, again, you just click the view, and then anywhere you see this 3-dot button menu is going to have action items in it. And so here you'll see you can archive, delete, or edit. Again, I don't recommend that you ever delete a property because you will lose everything associated with that property, including tenants information, lease information, accounting information, maintenance history. Everything goes when you click this delete button. So I don't recommend it. We do give users the option to do it, because if you want to delete a property, you can, but it's not something that we recommend. We definitely recommend, if you don't have any use for the property anymore, just click archive. Otherwise, just click edit and you can go in and edit the unit. If you want to edit the property level, if you want to edit the unit, you would click view unit, and same thing. There's a 3-dot button. You can do the same thing here. You can also clone units, because if you have a property with 20 units and they're all the same 1 bed, 1 bath with the same square footage or whatever, you can clone it over and over and over again when you're creating the property, which is really cool. Otherwise, just click edit and you can go and edit that information. Now, the property information and the unit information are going to be different when you go to list a rental property that is a multifamily. It will show when you go to list it, we'll actually go to a listing right here. And you can see right here for unit 101 at this property, this is kind of what it's going to show in terms of the listing information for this specific unit. And you can actually go and view this on the actual listing page. If you have it sent to your listing website, you can view it on there to see a much more detailed page with brighter colors and all that good stuff. And it'll show your property images, and it'll have like an apply now button and all that good stuff. So you can actually see what your listing website is, or your marketing website, by going here. So this one is mypropertymanagement.mytenantcloud.com, and you can go to that site to see your active listings. So that pretty much wraps up everything. Now, keep in mind, if you do go to list a, one last thing I wanted to make sure that you know is if you go here to the listings tab to list a vacant unit or vacant property, you'll have two tabs, listed and unlisted. So you can go to unlisted and click list this unit. And when you click this list this unit, you'll have the opportunity to upload the specific photos for this specific unit. And you can also edit a lot of the same information here. If, for instance, if the property has barbecue areas, clubhouse, all that stuff, whatever you want to show up on the actual marketing listings, whether that's through a third-party syndicated website or whether it's just on your marketing listing on your free TenantCloud listing website, this is all the information that you can really get down into the nitty-gritty and detail exactly what this specific listing entails, and really take the opportunity to market your property properly to the people who might be finding this listing online. And that pretty much wraps up this section of the properties and units webinar. And we're going to be answering some of your questions that you have asked us through the question button. We're going to answer a few questions live, and so we'll pick probably we've got a couple here that are pretty good questions we're going to cover live so that we can answer them for everybody, because they were really, really good quality questions. As you can probably see by now, TenantCloud is a full end-to-end property management software solution. In this webinar, we covered creating a property, the importance of entering property information, assigning an owner and creating owner distribution invoices, equipment tracking, as well as the difference between property information and listings information. Whether it is the incredibly convenient integration of assigning owners to properties so they can view live reporting on their properties, automating the management fee and owner distribution invoicing process, or the ability to track the maintenance history in every single rental unit, TenantCloud has a solution for your property management needs. If you want to learn more about TenantCloud products, the team that makes the magic happen, or just want to learn more about being a more informed landlord, you can follow the TenantCloud podcast on Apple, Spotify, or any other platform where you listen to podcasts. And you can also view over 100 videos on our TenantCloud YouTube channel, or read our blog at tenantcloud.com/blog. If you have a TenantCloud account, you can also join our exclusive private Facebook group made just for TenantCloud users. If you have not done so already, you can sign up for a free TenantCloud account today at www.tenantcloud.com.